Welcome to episode 12 of the St. Charles Podcast. I'm Eric Wood,
Father Mark Brown.
and we are here to talk about chaos in the continuum.
Is there anything else but lately?
So the most recent action item would be the letter that is going around social media from the Archbishop of the ACC, which is breaking formal communion with the UECNA.
Right.
For what reason, Father?
That's what everybody's asking. Why? I'm just lucky the ACNA has gone quiet, because that's what we were talking about the last few weeks, is the horrible leadership of the ACNA. Well, now we get to talk about the horrible leadership of the Continuum. Archbishop Haviland wrote a letter dated August 1st to Bishop Robinson, which no one got, especially he didn't get. He didn't even find out he was not in communion with the ACC until about August 15th.
And when we say Bishop Robinson, that's the presiding bishop of the UECNA.
Yes. So he didn't even know it until probably the weekend of the 15th of August. It went in an email. I mean, Haviland did not. This is the modus operandi of Haviland. He writes some sort of letter, and then he goes underground. He's in Latin America right now, so when all this broke, he's down in Venezuela doing whatever he's doing in Venezuela. And leaving it to everybody else to clean up, and his sycophants to run around and do whatever. But he wrote this letter on August 1st. Presiding Bishop, I think that's the title he uses, Robinson, or it's Archbishop Robinson.
Presiding Bishop
Robinson. Did not find out until, I think it was the 14th or the 15th of August. And he was actually told by, I believe, can I have this wrong, Bishop Giffen, who found out, and he was like, called the presiding bishop, and he had no clue. I read the letter. It's typical Haviland. He makes things up, like he did with Father Robinson, Calvin Robinson. He said one of the main reasons, the first one is that the UECNA was poaching his priests and parishes.
Yeah, I saw that. It made it look like some parish had moved or something.
Yeah, and Robinson was, presiding Bishop Robinson was like, what are you talking about? He has no clue. Now, I got an email, or so I had an exchange on Facebook with a UECNA priest who was serving an ACC parish, an Anglican Catholic parish.
That's the real tragedy of this.
He had no idea. He didn't know what was my position now.
I saw that too. That's the amazing part. Is
Yeah.
you have this parish that's impacted in this very intimate way, where their rector, who I don't know how long he's been serving there, maybe he's rector, maybe assistant priest, I don't know his exact
Priest in
status.
charge, something.
But he's no longer going to be allowed to do that, I guess.
Well, he doesn't know. His vestry doesn't know. This is out of left field for everybody. Once again, typical Haviland. So he does that. And there's other parishes, and there's, in the continuum, priests and jurisdictions cross-pollinate all the time. We have parishes in Arizona, one jurisdiction, which has an ACC deacon or an ACC priest in it.
Yeah, I can think of a couple right now where in D.C. it is a APEC parish with an ACC priest.
Right.
And in Colorado, the opposite, where it's an ACC parish with an APEC priest.
Right. And so it's all over. Like me, I came here, I was actually Reformed Episcopal Church when I got here. So we cross-pollinate all the time. And so when an archbishop wakes up for no rhyme or reason and does this, nobody sees the downflow of what happens on the parish level.
Oh, it impacts these places locally that are situated like that.
Yeah.
And that's tough.
So now what? Now this priest is asking the Archbishop Haviland. I'm sure he hasn't gotten a response. He's asking presiding Bishop Robinson, who has no response to give him, because Haviland hasn't even talked to him in years. According to one thing, and I get to something, I had an exchange with presiding Bishop Robinson. The other one is the UECNA does not affirm the affirmation of St. Louis enough.
They kind of do.
They do, but then not in the way the ACC wants them to. They want the affirmation of St. Louis to supersede all the formularies of Anglicanism. Well, wait a minute. And as you told me, one of the ACC priests wrote an article and called the men who put the affirmation of St. Louis together the St. Louis Divines, and I about spit my coffee out. That's such a delusional bubble. They're not divines, believe me, they're not.
They were good people.
They were
that
good people,
objected
but
to
they're
women's
not on the level of
ordination, and they got together in a act of defiance against something that was
Yeah.
wrong that was going on in the church at the time.
Right. I watched an interview Bishop Robinson did with one of his priests recently, before this letter came out. He was talking about the affirmation of St. Louis, how they hold to it, not to the degree and the level where it supersedes everything, like in the ACC. And
Where it's rewriting 400 years of history.
400 years of history,
That's how he says
2,000,
it.
yeah, 2,000 years of history, whatever. But I asked Bishop Robinson, I sent him an email, a text, an email. I said, what's going on here? I was always told, and it was always alluded to, the presiding Bishop Robinson was very anti-Catholic. He wouldn't interplay well with others and stuff. Come to find out, he wanted to be part of the G4. He was asked, but he couldn't go because they'd already scheduled the Synod. And he said, well, please keep me informed, in the loop. That was in 2017. He said, I found out the developments, social media, like everybody else. They never called me back. They never said or did anything. After my interactions with him, seeing how he's interacted with, say, Bishop Giffen, seeing some interviews, I'm like, what I have been told about him by Anglo-Catholics is totally wrong. And I'm going to be like Father George Conger. I have Bishop Robinson, I have Archbishop Haviland. Who am I going to believe? I believe in Robinson, okay? Haviland's track record is not good. And somebody asked, well, how is that going to affect? Because when Haviland took over the ACA, Anglican Church of America, he made them sever communion with other Anglicans.
With the TAC.
The traditional Anglican Church. He made them sever, because he's doing what? He wants to be the only guy in charge. So he's having everybody sever communion with everybody else. Some Reformed Episcopal Church folks, if you're following it, are getting on these threads going, well, how's that going to affect our relationship with the APA? We share pensions, we share this, because every time somebody comes into the orbit of Haviland, they start having to cut ties with other people.
That's hard to break, though. You can't break a permanent tie like a joint pension system.
No, you can't, but you can make it very difficult. And I think Haviland has enough self-delusion that he thinks he can. And I made a real snippy or snide comment. Somebody said, well, what's going to happen? I said, well, when Haviland gets back from Latin America, he'll write the letter that the former Archbishop of the Anglican Province of America, Bishop Chad, will send to Bishop Sutton outlining what's going to go forward. And people laughed, but some people were like sitting in private messages going, well, it ain't far from the truth, is it? I'm like, sadly, yeah. But there's also a quiet rebellion growing in the ACC. I know of several Anglican Catholic Church priests who, as one of them said, I did not sign up for this BS. So they're angry. There's 2 synods coming up in October, one for Bishop Hewitt, and then the ACC.
The Holy Cross.
Holy Cross, and then then the ACC. The ACC, they're just going to rubber stamp whatever Haviland wants to do. Most of these folks that are upset are with Bishop Hewitt, which they are now considered ACC, even though they're still under the Diocese of the Holy Cross until Hewitt retires. Some of them don't want to be under Haviland. Some of them don't want to be under Jones, Archbishop Jones. They just don't like this duo they see of leadership. I've gotten, where can we go? I've had priests text me, who else is out there? They're ready to just leave, they're done. I'm like, just go to your synod and let your bishop know. Most of these are, I call them Hewitt's boys. Most of them are Hewitt's guys. I said, go to the synod and let your bishop know what's going on. Because Hewitt, I think, is 78, well past, or 76, well past retirement. He wanted to retire 2 years ago and they wouldn't let him. If he does retire and Haviland does accept his resignation, well, what's going to happen to his parishes? That's what they're asking. What's going to happen to our parishes? So that's come down with the ACC and the UECNA. It's almost like between the Episcopal Church, ACNA, and the Continuing Church, it's just what in the world is going on? With not just Anglicanism, it's happening all across the board here in America. Back when David Virtue was still somewhat of a decent reporter in the early 2000s, he had a part of his Virtue Online would have a subsection, What Fresh Hell? And it's usually something revolving around some new thing the Episcopal Church was doing that was wrong. I think you can start that with the Continuing Church and the ACNA. You also could start it with the Roman Catholic Church. Like I said, I got a friend, an acquaintance of mine, who's a Vatican reporter, and his name is Jewel Gomez. If you go look him up on Facebook and follow him, and the stuff that he uncovers and reports on coming out of the Vatican that they don't want you to know about is mind-blowing. Everybody thinks it's so nice and easy over in the Roman Catholic Church. It's not. This is the year of Jubilee. Pope Leo is now going to be openly receiving open homosexual activists, trans activists who want to change the laws of sexuality in the church. He's receiving them. Now, they've gone before, never been received. He's officially receiving them now, which gives them credence, gives them legitimacy. Why? Why is the new Pope doing that? Let him show up and then rebuke him in front of everybody. That's what he should be doing. He's not going to do that. Francis didn't do that. Sadly, Benedict didn't do that. John Paul II didn't do that. Oh my gosh, the Cardinal Dolan, when he took over in New York at St. Mary's, he had a big thing and bringing all the different groups in that worked within the diocese. Well, they brought in all the transgender groups, all the homosexual groups, all the, hey, let's promote homosexuality folks, the James Martin types. And Dolan just received them and smiled and greeted them and welcomed them in. That's sadly,
It's a signal.
It's a signal. And that's Dolan. They did that in the when did Dolan get there? Late 90s, early 2000s. That's a signal that the hierarchy ascended. I'm not saying that the laity are like that. It's just like in the Anglican Church. It's our hierarchy that's gone off the rails. And it's happening. They get rid of good bishops like Strickland. So there's a lot of issues and problems going on in the Continuing Church. And most of them are just because, to be blunt, we've put the wrong men in positions of authority. We've put men who... I was a Marine infantry officer. I started off with over 80 people in my officer candidate platoon. 24 of us made it through. They weeded people out for emotional reasons, all sorts of reasons. And then 2 of the guys who made it through still weren't offered commissions. You don't want weak-minded men in leadership. I'm not talking about men who are not educated. We have that too. But I'm talking about men who are weak. Haberlin is a bully, and he's weak. He does things behind the scenes. He has other people doing things for him. Marine officers, hey, our yes is yes, our no is no. Sounds like Jesus, right? Sometimes we thought we were Jesus, but we weren't. But you never saw any of this duplicity. And if it happened in the officers' corps, the other officers discussed it, and they would shun that officer.
People didn't like it.
They didn't like it. That's conduct unbecoming an officer. You would hear that. You could actually get charged that. And what you're seeing going on in the ranks of bishops and senior priests and continuing is conduct unbecoming. They're doing things for self. They're doing things for their own power, their own whatever. You don't see or hear anything about what you hear with Bishop Giffen. Hey, let's get out, spread the gospel. Let's do this. Let's do that. You're hearing, what? They're arguing over silly things like Chandler Jones just put out something about the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin. I'm like, okay, yes, we've known about it. We've done it since about the 5th century. It didn't become canon law in Rome until 1950. So Romans doing it the way they do it is a recent thing in church history. We have it, in our missal. There's nothing wrong with it. But he acts like it's this, you've got to do this. And this is something we've been doing. He's like, breathless. And I'm like, okay, we're falling apart, and you want to fight over the assumption. Yes, the church has believed it. Yes, the church has celebrated it and remembered it since the 4th century, 5th century. Is that something we need to start fighting over? Well, it's a distraction from what our mission is. And that's just, that's just a weak man does that, okay? A weak person brings up things to distract people from what you're really going on and what's happening. And they cloak it in, hey, look how pious and religious and all we are. And I know a lot of folks who are, people will think they're so religious, so pious, and you sit there and you listen to them and you watch them, and then you see them away from other people. And it's a game, it's a front. And that's what's going on in the continuum. And the priests, the deacons, who are not sycophants, are fed up with it. The laity are fed up with it. When I first got here, I was installed on a Sunday afternoon. I had folks coming to me going, so when are we leaving? They were fed up with APEC. They didn't have a priest for 7 years, so they had a reason to be upset. They were ignored. One of the bishops said, I'm surprised y'all never left. I'm like, well, I'm not one of those guys that jumps around. But that was a level of leadership, and it still is. Even in our jurisdiction, other jurisdictions, you just sit there and you just, what do you think happens when priests get together away from the bishops? We sit there and we don't even have to have a drink. We don't even have to have a cup of coffee. We can just come back from a function, sit in a parking lot, and for 2 hours sit there going, what in the world? We're trying to spread the gospel. We're trying to keep this parish together. What are the bishops doing? And that's not just me. That's not just every priest. I mean, you can go online and you see it. The priests are wondering what is going on in the continuing church. And that's a direct correlation to the type of men we have as bishops, whether it's Haberlin, Jones, whoever. And look how they act and they behave when somebody like Giffen says, hey, let's try something new. Well, that's a threat to their power. They'd rather sink on the Titanic than plug the holes and admit wrong. I like what Giffen and Bishop Robinson have said. Broad church is Anglicanism. You have high church Anglo-Catholics like me and very low church folks. Don't want to really dump you, but Father Glory, more for this way, okay?
It's Trinity School.
Trinity School, okay? But we're all Anglicans. We're all Christians. And if you look at the continuum, if you're not an Anglo-Catholic, where's your place in the continuum? You don't have one. You have to, but then you have to be their brand of Anglo-Catholic. And we have folks here in St. Charles that are high churchmen, Anglo-Catholics, and some who are leaning broad down to the low. And I try to keep it balanced. And that's pretty much the way it is to a lot of the churches. And we have to get back to the way it was in America and the way it was in England before 78, 79. Because most of the folks who left the Episcopal Church were the Anglo-Catholics for various reasons. And when they became the leadership in the continuum, they became what they loathed. We're going to do it this way, our way. We're not going to brook any comment any other way. And I've read the articles, I've read the histories, I've read the Trinitarian from back then. I saw the silly fights, the comments. I was a deacon. I was serving in a UEC&A church as an Anglo-Catholic. And I think Bishop Connors is now long passed. He didn't know who I was, and he just said he was a low churchman. Out of the blue, he just looked, you know what the problem with Anglicanism is? No, what? Anglo-Catholics. Mm-hmm. What? Why? With all those Mary worshiping, bread worshiping, bead hold. And I just looked at him and I went, called my bishop and said, I can't serve here, because I'm one of those Mary worshiping, bread holding, whatever that he was going on about. And then you hear from the Anglo-Catholics, well, like I just talked to you about Bishop Robinson. That's got to stop. Yeah, but this current crop of bishops can't do that. They're too ingrained.
Well, it's not a healthy way to run a church from a seeker standpoint,
It's not.
where you are turning away people that would be natural fits over non-core issues.
Yeah.
When you demand that highest level of churchmanship, and that's the only way, and we have reoriented 400 years of Anglican history through this new prism, and if you're not on board with that, you need to find somewhere else. That's not how you get people.
No, it's not. I mean, there's different parts of Anglicanism. There's Anglicans that believe Anglicanism began when they split from the Episcopal Church in the 70s. There's Anglicans who believe it began in the Oxford movement or in the early Anglo-Catholic revival in the 1920s. There's others who think it happened in the Restoration of Charles II, 1662. Oh, no, it's Cromwell. Oh, no, let's go back to these divides. Let's go back to Queen Elizabeth. Let's go back to the 39 Art. Let's go back to here. Oh, Henry VIII. And that's when they stop. Well, no, Anglicanism goes all the way back to the first century.
It's almost like when you hear people try and say, Jesus is this, Jesus is that.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to put Jesus in a box.
You can't put Jesus
And
in a box.
Anglicanism's kind of the same thing.
They want to
where
put it in a box.
It's
But-
hard to put it in a box.
But they want to put it in a box that they're comfortable with. So I'm comfortable with the Elizabethan settlement. So that's Anglicanism. Anything else is not Anglicanism. No. Anglicanism predates Henry. It predates Augustine of Canterbury. Okay, it predates St. Patrick, who was Welsh, who went to Ireland. He was actually a priest in the what we call the Church of England today. People don't know
It's
that.
like the Celtic church.
He was in the Celtic. His grandfather was a priest. His dad was a deacon, or the other way around, something like that. So that's what it was. And it was broad, and it was the Celtic way, there was the Britain way, and then Rome came in and said, you got a king to say we're going to do it the Roman way, and everybody had to do it the Roman way. Because I was watching a podcast, and it was all Roman Catholic. Well, we have to be unified. And I'm like, y'all are not even unified. And you're demanding everybody be under you, but you're not even unified. How many rights do y'all have? How many Eastern churches and this and that? Anyway, we have to get away from just being Anglo-Catholic. We've had folks come in here, and usually it's the men who like the high church. And it's usually their wives, especially coming from the evangelical background, that don't like the smells and the bells. Okay. And so they leave. After everything I've been seeing developing in the continuum, and seeing the writings of Bishop Giffen, I'm like, okay, St. Charles is going to have a little bit of a sea change. I'm a committed Anglo-Catholic, but we're going to be kind of more of a broad church. We're going to add some, quote, lower services, something that could fit everybody. Going to the 1662, which the Archbishop was approved.
Morning prayer
Morning
based.
prayer
where
based.
Communion's not every week at that one
Right.
specific service.
Right. Something that, some Anglicans, maybe the majority, it doesn't matter, are going to like that better. That one's not going to be the smells and the bells. And the ones who like the smells and the bells, the chanting, the singing, and all of that, well, that's your other service.
It's the main service.
The main service. Or, whichever, or maybe just not even use that terminology, the main service and the first and the second service. Maybe the low church and then the more high church. There'll never be traditional contemporary because you'll never see a praise band and stuff like that in here. But something for everybody. And also just, if you just want to come here and sit, because people are leaving the evangelical church, the Episcopal church, the Roman Catholic church for various reasons. They've been spiritually abused. They've just mentally been, they can't take it anymore. They're totally against any kind of formed or formal religion because of what they've experienced. And that's legitimate reasons.
They got their reason.
They have their reasons, okay? And some of them are legitimate, some of them not so much so, but they have their reasons. Well, come here, sit. Sit and let us love on you. Just sit and nothing's expected of you. And just listen and hear the gospel, whether you like the low or the high. You just want to come for morning prayer or evening prayer. Just come here and experience God. And if you stay, wonderful. If you're like, well, I think I'll reconcile with the Roman Catholic Church. Okay, wonderful. Okay? But a place where you can come and just be with God And if they are put off by seeing chasubles and thuribles and incense everywhere, well, have a spot for them. Make a spot for them. Make a spot for everybody. And let's stop this tribalism. This is what's killing Christianity in the West. It's this tribalism. I just want to scream when I hear Roman Catholics say, well, we're the Church that Jesus Christ started. I'm like, no, you're not. And even Jesus says that. No, you're not. The apostles, Jesus gave us the apostles. The apostles started the church. Jesus is the foundation, the cornerstone. He taught the apostles, and he said, now go out, and the apostles are the ones that planted the churches. The apostles are the ones that did everything.
Hence apostolic succession.
That's why not every Roman Catholic priest and bishop could trace their apostolic succession back to St. Peter.
So to circle it back to the initial development, let's go back in time.
Mhm.
The ACNA is formed in the 2009-ish time frame.
Okay.
And at the same time, the three bodies of chambers-based continuing churches,
Mhm.
the UECNA, the APCK, and the ACC got together
Right.
and even had some joint bishops
Mhm.
where they had joint suffragan bishops, and that was really the unity point, was those three bodies.
Right.
And at that time, you have communion agreements that are entered into that work reciprocally for all three of those jurisdictions at the time. Us, vis-a-vis the ACC and the UECNA. And as we sit here today, from Apex perspective, those are both valid, and we're in communion with both of those bodies. And that was true for all three of those bodies until this letter that
Right.
came about, where the ACC then broke communion with the UECNA.
Right. Haviland was the archbishop back then. He's been there for
Long time.
a long time. And the archbishop of the UECNA was Archbishop Reber, whom I met.
I think it's still Morse in the APCK.
Now, the man who ordained me to the diaconate was Presley Hutchins, who was an ACC bishop for the UECNA. It's interesting, huh? Got this Anglo-Catholic, comes in, ordains an Anglo-Catholic as a deacon, and I served in the UECNA parish as a deacon. And then, still as a deacon, I served in an ACC parish as deacon in charge, because they didn't have a priest, for several months. The man Bishop Nolan, who became the man who ordained me after we had moved to the REC, was consecrated by Reber, Hutchins, and Weigel, who was APCK, ACC, UECNA.
That's when they were doing all those joint consecrations.
All that joint consecrations and everything else, joint communions and everything. And then they just kind of didn't keep feeding the relationship, and it started slipping apart.
And at this time, the APA was under Bishop Gundorf and
Yes.
was very close with the REC.
Very close with the REC. There was some bad blood with some of the other groups like us, because of the way they were formed. And then always the accusations are thrown around, are their orders any good, and this and that and the other thing. Which, I just roll my eyes at. Because, you sound just like the Roman Catholics and the Orthodox. The Roman Catholics say our orders are no good. The Orthodox say everybody in the West are heretics. None of your orders, none of your sacraments are any good. You go to one of the Orthodox churches and join, you get rebaptized.
So they could do everything again.
They have to do everything again. So I just kind of looked at this going, really? So it started breaking up. The leadership I found out in 2009, the leadership in the continuing church is very prickly. Don't question it. Don't ask questions they don't want to answer. Because when you do, bad things happen. Okay? I know Bishop Seaman and Bishop Nolan, both of these are UCNA bishops, asked questions of Reber about the ACNA. Why? Because we priests were getting questions from the laity, this new group. Are we in communion with them? What are we doing with them? What's going on? So what do? We ask our bishops, hey, what's going on? What's going to be our relationship with them? And the bishops turn and say, hey, Bishop Reber, what's going to happen? What's going to be our relationship with them? He just, after a while, just lost his mind. And you're just like, what's going on, you know? And that's ended up being our sizable chunk of the UECNA went to the Reformed Episcopal Church.
That was also right after the Reformed Episcopal Church had joined the ACNA.
Well, just before they had joined the ACNA.
The Common Cause Partnership area.
Right. And because I remember as a deacon asking my REC priest, why don't we join the ACNA? I was against it. I could see that they were just the Episcopal Church with a veneer of orthodoxy, which is starting to unravel. I mean, you're starting to see it happening. There's still some great people in the ACNA, great dioceses, Orthodox dioceses in the ACNA, but it's a confederation and it's falling apart. You got too many different things. It's dual integrity stuff. They don't like priests like Calvin Robinson, but they'll let other priests with these weird, crazy social media, and they just hire. It's just we've already covered all that. That's just you're just looking at a different version of the Episcopal Church in many ways.
I love the online analogy I've heard of a tech going the speed limit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's amazing. So all that happened. We've been in communion with each other in the continuing churches, but usually, somewhere along the line, some bishop is going to throw a cog in the wheel and do something because he feels threatened, his power base threatened, his prestige threatened, and it's all about him. And so he does something that just busts everything up. They want to be, like the ACNA wants to be recognized by the Orthodox and the Roman Catholics. It'll never happen. They keep thinking and fooling themselves into thinking it'll happen, but it'll never happen based on WO, their positions on social.
Unless the Roman Catholic Church wants WO so bad for
Yeah.
deacons that they do it as a backdoor mechanism or something.
That, well, and anything can happen now in Rome. I know my Roman Catholic friends will go, no, it never happened. Yeah, don't say never, It will sneak in. There's enough laity that want it. And there's enough priests that want it. I mean, go into some Roman Catholic churches, the only man you're going to see around the altar is the priest. Everybody else, from altar service to Eucharistic ministers to whatever, or women, and usually middle-aged women and teenage girls. I went to down in Pensacola this last Friday, the Assumption. None of the Anglican churches down there celebrate it, so I went to a Roman Catholic church. And when you go in, what do you see? There's the priest, usually gray-headed, and then what do you see around him? Who's handing out communion? The women. Who's serving and assisting him at the altar? The girls. So they have already, just without calling it that, they have women in these ministry positions performing the role of the deacon already. And in Germany, they're starting to let them preach, which is against canon law. Don't say it can't happen, because right now in Germany and in America, women are fulfilling the roles of deacons. That's what happened in the Episcopal Church. Francis, just a couple of years before his death, changed canon law to allow, see, women up there, it's always been against canon law. Francis, a couple of years before his death, changed canon law to allow them to be up there. So now it's legal. Can I in my lifetime? I hope not in my lifetime. But I could see them going through some sort of schism. I mean, every 500 years, Roman Catholic Church schisms. But
It's reduced since the Reformation.
yes, it do. I mean, it's been 500 years. It was the Reformation, it's 500 years ago. The Great Schism, East and West, was 1,000 years ago. We had the Assyrians and the Eastern Orientals.
The Oriental Orthodox.
Right, and all that at the 500s. So every 500 years, something happens in the DNA of the church, and we just go crazy. And that happens.
Maybe it'll be apostasy and orthodoxy this time.
I hope. I really, truly hope it would happen. But one of the things we've got to stop doing is all this tribal delusion that we're in. My way is the only way. I'm this triumphant attitude people have. I mean, I was watching a podcast before I came to church this morning. It's a different one. On Catholic Answers, had these two converts in there, and they were talking about, do Protestants worship God? Oh, dear God, help
Well,
me.
they question that, but they'll say that Islam has the same God.
These guys are questioning whether Protestants worship, God correctly, and then they turn right around and listen to the Pope saying the Muslims and the Jews worship the same God, but I guess the Protestants don't. You know, that kind of stupidity, arrogance, delusion, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's got to stop. But we get so into our tribalism, whether we're Anglicans, various forms of Anglicans, Roman Catholics, Baptists. What's the common core? That's what we got to keep going back to. Now, the ACNA will never be recognized by anybody like Rome or the Eastern Orthodox because of women's ordination and other things. The continuing church wants so badly to be recognized by Rome or the Polish National Catholic
Too
Church.
small.
Rome will never do it. Why should they? We're insignificant to them. Number two, the Polish nationals. Well, why will they join us? We're running around like a bunch of kindergartners, running around crazy, doing all sorts of weird things. And why would they want to get involved with this mess called continuing Anglicanism? So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the future.
Let's pick it up again next week, Father.
We sure will. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
See y'all next time.
See you next week.